Hey everybody, Brent Bergherm here. Thank you for joining me. I've got a quick study on color and what it is that our eyes are doing when we are interpreting and seeing color. And this is just the tiniest of slices that's coming out in the lesson on color and understanding color that's in my new course called Designing Creativity in Photography. And when we are looking at color, it's important for us to understand how our eyes actually interprets the scene, how our eyes interpret the photograph, how we're looking at whether it's the print or on screen or whatever the case is. Color is definitely one of those things that if we can at least understand a little bit more about how our eyes behave, we're probably going to be able to understand how it is that color affects us in our imagery and affects us in our lives as we are creating our photography. So let's hop on over to the screen now, and I want to give you this view here for about 30 seconds. And what I want you to do, now this is called the after image. I have it, I already have it there. So if you've ever done this kind of exercise, you already know what we're talking about. But I want you to focus on that black dot in the middle of the picture, in the middle of this oddly looking thing. It's just weird and with all those colors. But focus in on what we're looking at with that dot and just stay there for about 30 seconds. We're going to leave it. And as you're looking at that, what's happening is this coloration, especially that cyan color, and of course the green is affecting us. Those neutral colors, those are simply going to basically be neutral. They're going to continue being neutral, but these greenish colors and these cyan colors, they're going to affect us. So keep looking at that dot. We want to look straight at that dot for a few more seconds, and then I'm going to switch it on you. And what I want to do when I switch it, I don't want you to do anything but continue looking in that same space. So it's really important to get this whole thing going. It's really important that you play along. All right, here we go. Now, as you're looking at this image, of course, now you see a balloon image, but you do see some color, don't you? And now blink your eyes. If you haven't blinked them already, bang, it goes black and white. At least it does for me. It's just a pure black and white image. Now, this is the original image, the original photograph that it came from, that this is derived from. What's important to understand, or what's important to note, is when we're interpreting and looking at color and we're going from image to image or place to place in an image, we might have a little bit of this after image happening. We might have a little bit of this figment of the previous color still affecting us. And so kind of like the same thing is kind of like when you go into maybe a coffee shop and you smell something, or you go into, smell some perfumes or colognes, at the local Macy's or whatever, and then they give you something else to sniff between the different scents because you have that after taste or after smell or whatever the case is. And so here we have that aftertaste, we have that afterthought, whatever, in the visual sense, where our corneas, our eyeballs are still holding on, our brain is still holding on a little bit. I've got one more, and this is really interesting too. Take a look at that dot again, another 30 seconds or so, just focus in on that dot. And this one is going to be a little bit different for us. The experience is going to be just slightly different, and I'll get to that in a moment once we change it. But keep looking at that dot. And when we're going to shift it back, you already know what's going to happen. But when we're going to shift it back, we're going to do one slightly little different experience of one slightly little different practice here than we had with the other image. And that I thought when I was going through this, I thought was very interesting, very intriguing as to why this is happening, but also what's happening is really intriguing too. All right, so we've looked at that dot for almost 30 seconds. And so let's go ahead and switch it now here. And of course, you see the ferns and you see this green color coming in. But for me, when I blink, and I still look at that same area, it still has that green feeling to it. It still has, now it's starting to fade for me. I don't know if it is for you or not, but that green is starting to fade. And once I start moving my eyes all around, that's when I start to get that feeling of that pure grayscale image. Here's the original image, these ferns, this vibrant green ferns. What I think is interesting here is with the other image, the balloon image, what happened was we were blinking. When we blinked, the whole thing was reset, and our mind interpreted that scene purely as a black and white image. It lost the after image. But here, when we have a rather monochromatic influence. The blink, to me, again, I invite you to tell me if this was a different experience for you, but to me, that greenery stayed. Now, it was a little bit faded and it kept fading slowly and slowly away, but the eye still wanted to see that green color there. And I thought that was just really very interesting. All right, let's go and actually make this ourselves. I'm going to actually show you how to do this yourself. So we're going to use Photoshop. So if you don't have Photoshop, you'll need to follow along in whichever program you have. But I want to show you how to do this yourself so you can make this yourself if you want to. So let's dive in to Photoshop with this photograph. All right, so here we are in Photoshop with this image, and it's just, a standard regular old image, right? And here we go, seeing the whole thing. All right, so we have our channels panel over here is open, and that's what we're going to work in. We're going to work in the channels mostly. But what we need to do is we need to convert this to the LAB color mode. What happens in LAB, you'll notice it separates out the gray tones from the color information. And so when we go to the A and we go to the B channel, this is just a pure representation of what these colors are. And it manages color completely differently. If I were to take a curves look at what we're dealing with here, take a look. We have channel B, it says, our output and our input. All right, so we have this 0 point here. Notice when I come down to this item down here, we have an output of negative 128, an input of negative 128. That's odd numbers. And here we're at 127 and positive 127 on both sides. The 0 point, that is where we're right in the middle, and that is where we have zero saturation. And the further we get out from that location in the center, that's where we start to have the more saturated colors. And so let's take a look now at the A channel. And so it's basically the same idea, but you can see how it's spiking in different areas. All right, and so when we are looking at just the lightness channel, this is where our grayscale is pulled out of. So while we have contrast information in the RGB channels in a regular RGB, in a regular RGB image, where we have brightness and darkness and color, and in LAB we have brightness and darkness completely separate, and then we have color dealt with completely separately. And so we're dealing with all sorts of different things here. Let's take a look. If I were to bring these back up, and if I were to just highlight, I'm doing the wrong thing here. If I were to just highlight this one image, and if I were to hit Command I, and of course that's making it into a negative, and I hit Command I on this one, all right, it makes it into those colors. It just inverts those colors. So here we have an absolute inversion of the colors. And this is what the whole thing that we need to think about is we're dealing with the inverted colors, because the after image idea is after your brain has absorbed that color for a period of time, and then you instantly change and look elsewhere, it kind of has this counteractive effect, and it shows you the exact opposite color. So just really quickly, I'm going to restart this whole thing, and I'm going to start from scratch here. And so what we did is we went to mode and went to LAB color. And then in the LAB color, we analyzed them a little bit, but it's important to make those a negative color, to make those the opposite of what they are. So the Command I, or Control I if you're on a PC, inverts those colors. But notice we're not doing anything with the lightness. We're not going to make this a negative, because that would just not work. And that's why you have to separate this out from being an RGB, because in RGB you do have brightness and darkness in those color channels, and then you also have color information in those color channels. And here we've separated that out. All right, so in order to make this work, we then need to get rid of everything that's happening here in the lightness channel. So we're going to fill it. So Shift Delete or Shift Backspace on a PC, and I'm going to use 50% gray. And so if I use 50% gray, it doesn't influence the color at all one way or another. Now it looks kind of gross and hideous, but this is basically what we need to be doing here in order to make this work. If I were to make this lighter or darker, that will influence the colors overall, and we don't want to influence the colors at all. Now, one thing you can do, and one thing I did, I'm going to increase the saturation just a little bit here. So if we were to go like 100 to 100, or output 127, input 100, We're basically, this is a way to increase the saturation. Now I'm going to match my numbers here. So down here on this input, this is negative 100, this one was positive 100. And this cross line still goes at the 0 point. Basically what I've done is I've increased the saturation. By pushing those lines together, we're going to cause the colors to get more rich. And let's do it one more time here on this channel. So we're treating all colors equally here. Oops, 99. Let's take it out to 100. There we go. And we'll grab this and bring this into about negative 100. All right. Excellent. And now as we look at this, we can see those colors are just a touch more punchy. All right. Now we need to convert this back. We're going to go back to RGB color. And then we're going to just simply save it. Well, you know what we need to do? We need to get on our brush tool. And we need black, so I have black. And I liked this image because it was just, right there. It had a natural thing to look at. And so I wanted to give the viewer something to concentrate on, so that's why I put in the black dot. All right, so now let's save it. So Command-Shift-S, and we'll just call this after image 1. And now it's time to go back, grab this, and now it's time to extract out just the lightness channel, and then we can have a pure grayscale image. Now, if I were to just do that, you might think, why don't you just do that, Brent? Well, it's because those colors are also affecting the overall brightness, lightness values, and we don't want the colors to affect that. We want to extract the brightness and lightness values from the color. So that's, again, where we do the LAB conversion, and then we're going to trash those items. And I think I trashed too many. Did I trash too many? Yeah. Oh, no, we got it right. Delete selected channels, yes. So it's calling it an alpha channel because it doesn't know what else to do it. And it automatically converted us to a multi-channel. And so we're going to convert back to grayscale. And because I want to be able to show this pretty much anywhere with ease online or whatever the case is, I'll go ahead and go back to RGB color, even though I'm leaving it desaturated, but it's taking that original lightness channel from the LAB and it's just making a standard JPEG out of it now. All right, so we'll just call this after image 2 and hit the old save button. And now this is the kind of thing we can do here in Photoshop. Again, focus on that dot. And when you're on that dot, you'll be able to have it, just then pop in. Now, when I do it so quickly like that, you don't have a strong sense of that color. When you are looking at it longer, at least 30 seconds, between 20 and 40 seconds is the optimal. Anything beyond 30 or 40 seconds, you're not going to have any greater influence in this after image, the color that's left over. But that's how you make your own after image if you're interested. And thank you so much for watching. There is a link in the show notes just down below there. If you're interested in getting information a little more about these on your email or anything like that, you can fill out the form I've got and I'll showcase a few items as I'm creating over these next few weeks, a few items that I'm going to be putting into this design and creativity course for my new membership that I'm creating for my Latitude Photography School. Thanks so much, and until next time, happy shooting!